Alrighty, so now that we have our numbers being updated in our display, it's time to take in our first value, store that, and then store our operator, and then be able to store a second value. So it's not going to look quite like this, but we want it to function like this and store all three of these different values. All right, so let's get started. We're going to jump back to the code, and at the very top here, we're going to start by creating three global variables. We're creating them globally because we're going to use them in multiple functions. So the first thing is a let. So we're making it a let because this is going to change. First value, capital V, equals 0. So the number 0, not with a single quotes, making it a string. Next, we're going to have a let for the operator value, again, capital V on value, and this is going to equal single quotes, meaning empty string, and then we'll add a semicolon there. And then the last one is a Boolean. So we're going to have let awaiting next value, capital N, capital V, equals false. So I will explain this in a little more detail when we get to it. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to replace our operator function with the actual operator function. We still want the input button value, but we want to send it to a different function. So this function is going to be called use operator. And then right above this, we're going to actually create the function. So we're going to create the function right here, use operator, and bracket, and we're going to pass in operator as our parameter. So this is taking our input button.value and curly brackets. And so the function that we want to accomplish here, the first thing is we want to take the string value from our calculator display text content, and we want to be able to convert that into an actual number value because that's what we will need for our calculations. So if we jump back over to the browser, there's a handy resource here on a method called number. So what this allows us to do, from its description here, we're going to use it as a function, and we're going to pass in number, and then we're going to pass in our string. And this is going to convert a string or other value to the number type. So if I'm passing in the string of 1, 2, 3, it's going to return it as a number, and we can use that then in our calculations. All right, so we can close this and jump back to our code. So we're going to start by creating a constant within this function called current value, capital V, equals number, capital N. You can see it's green, and then bracket, and we're going to pass in our calculator display dot text content. Okay, next we want to assign that current value to our first value variable, but only if a first value doesn't already exist. So we're going to comment out a title for that, assign first value if no value, and then we're going to create an if statement. So if bracket, and again, we can use our exclamation mark as a negative. So if there's no first value, so that'll also pass if our first value is equal to 0, which it is at the beginning of the project when the page is loaded first. And then curly brackets, we want to assign the first value to be equal to the current value. Next, we want to have the operator value, this is our global variable, be set by the value of the operator parameter that we're passing in from our click event. And then lastly, we just want to be able to console log both of these things. So we're going to use a single quote first value in order to see exactly which is which, then a comma, then our first value variable, and then we're going to create a console log, single quotes, this is our operator, comma, and then we're going to pass in the operator value, and then semicolon. Okay, so ready to now save that and check it out. All right, so if we enter in a number and then press an operator, we can see that we have console logged our values. So we have our first value is 7, and we've also console logged our operator. If we hit our clear button, we can see that our display is cleared. And this time I'm going to type in 6 and then minus. And we can see that the operator value changes, but the first value does not change. So this is because we now need to update our reset functionality to include resetting the values for our first value, our operator, and also the Boolean that we had on load. So we're going to jump back to the code and take care of that. So we're going to scroll up to the top, and we're just going to copy these 3 things. And we're going to go down, and we're going to revise this to say we're going to reset all values, comma, the display. And we can paste this in here, but we don't need the let statements. So we'll highlight that, do a tab, and then we will use our multi-select, Command D or Control D, and select all those, then backspace. Okay, now we can save that and check it out. So we're going to have a value of 8 plus, and you see we have it here. If we use our clear button and I type in 3 minus, you can see now our first value has been updated. Awesome. Now that that's working, we need to set up actually accepting the second value. That's what our third global variable is for. So if we go back, in our operator function, we will need to set this Boolean for the first time. So we're going to set it below our if statement here, and we'll comment out a title for this. So we want to say we are ready for the next value, store our operator. So what this Boolean is doing, awaiting next value equals true. So this Boolean is triggered after we press the operator, because once we press the operator, it means we are done inputting our first value, and we are now ready for the next value. In this case, it is the second value. Okay, and then also in our if statement, we want to have an else statement, because if there is a first value, then we want something to happen with the new current value, which is actually the second value. So we'll add another console log here, single quotes, current value, comma, and then we'll pass in our current value constant. Next, in our number value function, we need to create a condition that will reset the display if we are awaiting the next value, or else we will update the display as we were doing before. So we will first cut this, what we had previously, and then we're going to comment out a title here. So we want to replace the current display value if first value is entered. So once the first value is entered and we hit the plus sign, we want our display to reset itself. So we're going to have an if statement, if bracket, awaiting next value. So this is short form for saying awaiting next value equals true. We can just type awaiting next value. And then curly brackets. And then if we are awaiting the next value, we do want to reset. So we're going to use our calculator display text content, and this will be equal to the number that we are passing in. And then we want to set awaiting next value to be equal to false, and it will only be true again when we press our operator again, and we go into our use operator function. Else, curly brackets, enter, we want to paste in our previous functionality. So our spacing is a little weird here. I'm just going to tab that over, and I'm going to shift tab that back. Okay, so we can save that now and check it out. Alrighty, so we're going to enter a value, and we're going to hit an operator, and we can see that we have our first value and our operator plus sign. Next, we're going to add another value, so 9, and you can see that it actually replaced the 7 within our display here. Excellent. And if we hit another operator, we can see that our current value of 9 is logged, and we still have our first value. All right, so that's great. We have both of our values and our operator. We want to calculate before we actually do anything with the new operator, but we're going to tackle that in our calculation logic. One last thing we want to fix here, and this is our decimal operator situation. So as it stands now, if I were to input a number, 25, and then press an operator, we can see that we've already stored our first value of 25. However, I can still enter in a decimal point in our display. We want to prevent that from happening because, as you see, if I press another operator, our current value and our first value, neither of them have our decimal, they don't get updated. All right, so we want to prevent that from happening. So we're going to accomplish this by going back, and in our add decimal function, we can do this very simply. We're going to add another if statement at the beginning. So we can comment out a title for this: if operator pressed, don't add decimal. So this is showing the utility of our Boolean. So if bracket awaiting next value is true, then we just want to return, meaning that we're not going to run the rest of the function here. So let's save that and check it out. Okay, so if I type in 26 and then I press an operator, you can see that I've already stored my first value as 26. And you can see if I type in a decimal now, you can see that it is no longer updating, but I am free to type in the next number. And if I press an operator, we can see that we have the first value, 26, and the current value of 38. Excellent. So that is working exactly as we want it to. All right, so in the next one, we're going to actually tackle the calculation logic itself to be able to actually figure out the equation with our first value, our operator, and our current value. I'll see you in that one. Bye for now.